Jessie Quinn from Cup of Books, and today I'm going to be reviewing Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. I decided to review this one not just because I really enjoyed it, but because it's also the first book in one of Agatha Christie's more popular mystery series. And in terms of getting into either Agatha Christie or cozy mystery novels, I feel like the Miss Marple series is a really excellent place to start. Murder at the Vicarage is told from the perspective of the vicar, Mr. Clement, who tells the entire story through his perspective. It's all a first-person narration. In this one, a pretty disliked person, Colonel Prothero, is found murdered in the study of the vicarage, and almost immediately after the murder is discovered, someone steps forward and confesses. But then someone else confesses, and then there's evidence to believe that neither of the people who confessed actually did the murder, so the murderer may still be walking free. In terms of main characters, we have the vicar. He's fairly observant, like he's trying to figure it out, as the reader is also trying to figure it out. He also has a sense of humor about him. I really liked that this one was told from the perspective of another character and not the detective, who is Miss Marple in this one, because it really allowed the reader to be guessing alongside everyone else. We also have Miss Marple, of course, who actually plays a fairly minor role in this. She is this little old woman who really likes gardening, who is really observant. Miss Marple tends to use the fact that a lot of people don't take her seriously because she is this little old lady to her advantage. There's pros and cons, of course, of having a detective as your main protagonist in a murder mystery novel, but I think in this case it works really well that the vicar is our main character and then Miss Marple is a supporting character. There's a lot of different players in this one. At times I had trouble keeping track of all the characters because a lot of them are just minor, but at one point or another we're suspicious of them, or at least the vicar is suspicious of them. I think at one point there might have actually been two different Gladyses in this book, and it got a little confusing, I'm not gonna lie. I really like the way Agatha Christie sort of subverts expectations when it comes to her characters who are women in this one. There's a young woman in this who seems to be really vague, really sort of ditzy, but we discover that that's sort of a show she's putting on and that she's actually really smart underneath. There's also Miss Marple, who comes off as this doddering old woman who really loves gardening and is kind of a busybody, but she's a lot more than that. Some of the women in this novel are considered silly by the other characters, and it turns out they are just sort of silly, and it's never really contradicted or subverted, but a lot of the characters' assumptions about a lot of the women in the novel end up being subverted. And I thought that was really cool. Plot-wise, I think Agatha Christie does a really great job of throwing suspicion on everyone. This one kept me on my toes, and even though I was pretty convinced the entire way through that I knew who did it, I ended up being completely wrong. When it comes to Agatha Christie's writing style, she tends to write more dialogue than actual description, and that's something I've noticed in the few mysteries I've read of hers. If you're not paying a lot of attention, you can lose track of who's talking, particularly if it's a conversation where either character could be saying the same thing. If you're someone who is used to reading more description-based novels, it can take some getting used to. While you don't have to start with the first one, because I certainly didn't, I do recommend starting with The Murder at the Vicarage. This is just such a strong start for a series that I really recommend reading this one first. Also, I recommend this to people who are looking for a quick summer read or beach read because, again, this is really quick but really satisfying.